Thanks for joining us for Season 7 of the Hospitality Hangout, hospitality-focused podcast where the founders of Branded Strategic share their insights and bring technology and innovation leaders that are making things happen in the industry we love. My name is Jimmy Frischling, otherwise known as the Finance Guy. I'd like to introduce my partner, my brother from another mother, Mr. Michael Schatzberg, also known as the Restaurant Guy.
And thanks for that kind introduction, Jimmy. And to all those listening, feel free to call me Shatsy. And together, we are the personalities behind Branded Strategic Hospitality. We work at the intersection of hospitality, food service, technology, innovation, and capital. Jimmy, that was a mouthful.
It's getting longer. We keep
adding more verticals. Jimmy, I got to tell you, we got a phenomenal show.
We do.
I mean, really. I mean, this is each week gets better and better. The class of people we get better and better. But I just wanted to say one thing before we jump into it. Jimmy, I was thinking about something last night, and do you know what it was?
Rangers? New York Rangers?
I was not thinking about the Rangers, but
Okay.
it is very apropos to be thinking about the Rangers. I was thinking about, wouldn't it be great if there was one place that everybody could go to find the best-in-class tech and innovation in the hospitality space? Wouldn't that be great, Jimmy?
That would be great.
Well, Jimmy, awesome. There is a place. It's the Branded Marketplace.
Boom,
baby. Boom, baby. You go to thebrandedmarketplace.com, and we have hundreds and hundreds of solutions that every operator can use to help operate their restaurant or hotel or any place that's serving and selling food and beverage. So I urge every listener, that would be the four of us here on the podcast today, to go to thebrandedmarketplace.com and check it out. And it's not one size fits all, Jimmy. There's all different ones. And if you want to get on the marketplace, just email me, Shatsy, just at marketplace@brandedstrategic.com, and we'll get you signed up in no time. And Jimmy, how much you think that is?
It's got to be expensive. Very expensive.
From what I just said, I mean, you'd pay what, $1,000 a month?
At least.
Well, no, Jimmy, it's free. It's free for everyone to use it, Jimmy.
Free.
Yeah.
Free. All right. How do we make money, Shatsy?
Jimmy, volume.
We give it away. We
Jimmy,
make money in volume.
Show. Take it over.
All right. We really do have a very special show today. So I'm very excited. We're going to jump right into it. Today is a double first.
Never had this before, Jimmy.
Twice we've never had this. What have we never had? We've never had two guests on at the same time. And it's the first time we've ever had authors. Shats, these are really smart people we have on the show.
I was just thinking, having an author on our podcast is just, it's crazy to me because it's just crazy.
This is great. So we have two guests, same time, both authors. Let's jump into it. Today we have our friends Carl Orsbourn and Meredith Sandland, authors of the book, Delivering the Digital Restaurant, Your Roadmap to the Future of Food. Carl and Meredith, I'm sure by now this is not your first rodeo. You guys have your own flow, so we're going to let you take the lead. Please give us a little background about yourselves, your elevator pitch on the book, and we're thrilled to have you. Let's get into it.
Yeah, well, we're excited to be here, and I confess I've already been on the marketplace today, so I am impressed. It's good.
Hey, Meredith, what it cost you to go on the marketplace to check it out?
It was totally free. It was amazing.
Free. It's always free.
Yeah. So I'm Meredith Sandland, and together with Carl Orsbourn, we wrote Delivering the Digital Restaurant. I've spent about the last 10 years in restaurants. I started...
Arguably, by the way, the most famous book in all of the industry.
Well, it turns out there's not a lot of books in the restaurant industry, so it might be a case of being one of the only books in the restaurant industry, but it is has been really well received, and we're very pleased about that. So
when Jimmy and I go to all the trade shows, and we go to a lot of them, inevitably I always see somebody carrying that book around.
It's amazing, and we love to see selfies of people with the book on LinkedIn. It's so fun as an author to see that someone's actually read your book and cares about it and is getting something out of it. You put these things out there, you hope that someone reads it, and it's pretty neat to see when they do. So anywho, I've spent the last 10 years in the restaurant industry, started at Taco Bell, where I worked on the brand turnaround there and then real estate development. And halfway through building about 1,000 Taco Bells, I thought, gosh, it's weird. We're putting these restaurants next to malls when no one goes to malls anymore. And all of those restaurants are doing just great, but it did plant a seed in my mind that only grew when I tried to take Taco Bell into your neck of the woods and thought, wow, rent here is really expensive in Manhattan, and 40% of our sales are going out the door delivery. It would be so awesome if there was just a commissary that we could deliver tacos out of. But of course, ghost kitchens didn't exist at the time. So fast forward a couple of years, and I met the guys at Kitchen United, who at the time were three guys in an old culinary school trying to figure out what to do with it. And I walked in and thought, oh my goodness, they're making the thing that I, as the customer, the chief development officer of a big national chain, wish existed. And so I went and joined them and helped develop the initial business model, raise the initial capital, including from Google Ventures. And that is where my story intersects with Carl's.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right.
See, we have done this before, haven't we? Tracy, yes. Jimmy, lovely to see you. The reason you see us and the book at all the conferences is that this has been part of a subliminal strategy we've been working on for the last year and a half, trying to get us onto your podcast. So it's worked, Meredith. We can now put the book away.
It's really hard. You just ask.
Yeah, I know.
Shaq, don't give away that secret. Don't give away our secrets. This is a tough ticket. This is a very tough ticket to get on the show.
Months to get on. It's like Kimmel.
It's been months to get on, but great to be here. My background's largely in C-stores. I used to run the retail component of AM/PM over here on the West Coast, which is a 1,000-store network, over $1 billion worth of revenue. And it was really there where I saw just the change in dynamics of food, the way in which customers were becoming increasingly more demanding about convenience, better foods. And actually, for me, I always wanted to get into a startups environment. And so when I left BP, I spoke to a mutual friend of Meredith and mine, and she said, look, why don't you speak to someone else that has left a huge organization that's gone into the startup environment? Go and meet this lady, Meredith, and she'll tell you about her journey. And it was really there where Meredith started explaining about Kitchen United, the ghost kitchen scene, which I confess I hadn't heard about much before because, this was in its infancy.
It sounded very spooky when she brought it up, I'll bet.
She absolutely sure did. But it was great. And, when the opportunity came up to come and build out the operation and to build out the customer success model and to help the team really think about scaling that concept, it didn't take me very long to be able to determine whether that was the right next step for my career. But it was really through that we met between us pretty much every major restaurant chain in America. We spoke to many independents. And it was through those conversations, not just those that were in and working with us in the ghost kitchen setting, that we just saw this immense challenge that many restaurants were having in trying to figure out, how do we win when it comes to off-premise? How do we succeed in a ghost kitchen? What are some of the ways in which we need to be better at what we do to succeed? And Meredith and I were driving back one day, and I said, look, I know, why don't we buy them all a book? So we went onto Amazon, looked for said book. Book didn't exist. And once we had left Kitchen United, Meredith and I came back to that same idea and said, let's now write that book. Let's help the industry. Let's try and take all of the various different players that are doing some really exciting things in this space and tell their story. I mean, we interviewed over 100 or so technology leaders, restaurant leaders to try and explain, their stories of how to win in off-premise, why to look about this whole space, this entire ecosystem with optimism and positivity, and to actually say, even though this is a very scary time to be in the restaurant industry, it's also one of the most optimistic and exciting times as well. And the future is bright. And hopefully anyone that reads Delivering the Digital Restaurant will get that feeling.
I love it. I really enjoyed the book, and I really do want us to jump into it because while I recognize it is a book that is talking about the delivery in the off-premise space and the industry and the transformation of this industry, I also found some nostalgia in it because I grew up here in New York City, and I would say our dining consisted of at least 5 nights a week my mother cooked. Maybe one night we ordered in, or someone went to pick up a pizza or some Chinese food, and one night we went out. But it was a very much home, the home game is what we were playing. And the proliferation of delivery and off-premise has just been amazing. And so I want to kick things off because I think your book is not just for the industry, but it's also, I think, for the consumer and our guests to understand what is going on in this transformation and how all these different generations are interacting with the food service and hospitality industry. There's my preamble. Now I want to kick things off by talking about unit economics and specifically the shift from the 4-wall to off-premise. Prior to the pandemic, delivery was made up of, there was restrictions on price increases, and it stalled for a bit. But as Schatz and I and the team at Branded like to say, the pandemic changed nothing and accelerated everything. The pandemic rocketed off-prem. Do you think growth would have been inevitable? Do you think the pandemic is what lit the fuse, or this is the direction we were going?
Well, I think Bill Gates. I think Bill Gates said it best. Here we go. Here we go.
That's simultaneous.
Jimmy, I think I got to direct your question. Who's that question for?
Oh, a lot of pressure on me. All right, I'll tell you what. I'll let Meredith start, but I want to be fair, Meredith. I'm not always going to let you go first, okay? All right. I'll let you go first on this one. All
right. So we start the book out talking about the consumer and the changes that the consumer is going through. And the reason we do that is because, as exactly you say, the pandemic changed nothing and accelerated everything. Our consumer was changing already and was becoming much more interested in convenience, health, personalization, all of these things that delivery and in particular just digital engagement enable. And so while when the pandemic happened, we were all forced in a way to learn how to use these tools, even those of us who were laggards. The ingredients were there, right? So in the first chapter, we talk a lot about eating as a nuclear family no more, which I think, some people, when they hear me say that, they think, oh gosh, that's terrible. Like, are we all getting divorced and living singly? And this doesn't sound good, but it's actually all good news. We're living longer. We're having children later. We're having fewer kids. And as a result, the percentage of our lives that we spend as somehow a part of a nuclear family is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the percentage of our lives that we spend living alone or with roommates or as empty nesters is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when that happens, it turns out the economics of eating out or ordering in become much more attractive relative to the economics of cooking at home. So that's just one example of the ways in which our consumer is changing.
Carl, thoughts?
Jimmy, do you want that to be answered by Carl now as well, or should we move on?
Let's let Carl get involved, and then we'll figure out how we're going to play this.
Because he might have a better answer, I'm thinking.
There's no way it's better, but it might be as good. But it might be
definitely got a better answer.
Oh, definitely. I love it.
No, I'm going to build on what Meredith said. Look, Bill Gates said it best, right? He said digital adoption accelerated 10 to 15 years in the 1 to 2 years of the pandemic. So for us, yes, I think it would have happened, but it's been an acceleration, right? So it's not going away. Customers are getting used to this being part of their everyday lives. But I also want to dispel a fallacy here that the delivery consumer today is not stealing a customer from the dining occasion. It's the grocery occasion that it's competing with. So in our book, we highlight that, yes, absolutely, the customer's driving the change and it's not the tech companies. But we also say it's really important to realize that actually it's the consumer that's really driving the need for us to be able to embrace that they want to eat food wherever they are. In fact, people say, you've written a book called The Digital Restaurant. What is the digital restaurant? We say it's about being wherever your customer is.
Yeah, no, listen, being in New York City for as long as I have, and Jimmy, born and raised here, we used to always talk about, the grocery store was the competition way back when, because it was pizza, Chinese food, or it was the grocery store where your mom would go and get some food and make dinner. And that was your competition at the time. Let's talk about DSPs, delivery service platforms or providers. At Branded, we believe it's having a strong delivery program should include both your own delivery platform, your own white label, as well as third party. I mean, we've been using third party for as long as they've been around, over 20 years, and have a strong relationship with all of the delivery service platforms. Something I found very interesting in the book is that you pointed out, like in other industries we've seen, that overseas, especially in major cities, there are only two major delivery service platforms that reign, that are the king of those cities. You've referred to it as a duopoly. Can you share a little bit more about that? I mean, I see here in the States, I think that for all intents and purposes, I guess there's probably three major providers, right? And that may or may not change. But in the rest of the world, generally, you see two. Carl, can you talk a little about that? You see what I did there, Jimmy? See what I did there?
I see what you did there.
Right to Carl with that one.
See, look at this. You guys are professionals. You're professionals. This is really cool. So you're right. We focused a chapter on what we call the maturity of markets. The fact that actually the US isn't the most mature when it comes to this, And in particular, you're right, the DSPs in particular in India, in the UK, in China, there are two major ones. And part of that is because it's about understanding why the customer, what the customer wants. And the customer wants to go to these marketplaces to get choice. They want to be able to get variety. And for the entirety of the journey in leading up to today's point with where we are in the market, everything's been a land grab. It's about which restaurants can we get on which platform. And I think now what we're finding is that customers are leaning towards certain platforms, maybe because of the user experience, maybe because of the ease of being able to pay, maybe because of the subscription free delivery models that they have. But we probably will end up with two major DSPs here in the US. And that therefore enables the DSPs to start to refocus their attention away from land grabbing in terms of getting market share from restaurants, but now being able to take better utilization of their driver force. And so you just need to look at what's been happening over the last 6 to 12 months. You just need to look at the Super Bowl commercials with the way in which Uber Eats was saying it's not just about eats anymore. They're now trying to actually take advantage of pharmacy, of convenience, of pet food, all these things to be able to enable their driver force to be better utilized and therefore be able to be willing to be part of the platform for longer. That ultimately will drive efficiencies into the system. Those efficiencies will therefore make delivery something far more accessible. And when you look to somewhere like China, when you look to somewhere like Meituan, which is one of the biggest over there in terms of DSPs, it's now cheaper to have your food delivered than it is to eat out. That is potential future for us here, if, of course, we end up with the world of automation, because delivery drivers cost a bit more in the US than they do in China.
I really do find it all interesting, and there's so many parts to this story. First of all, I think global adoption, or rather adoption of the cell phone, was faster outside of the U.S., and that contributed in a mightiful way. And you highlight one of that as a factoid in how the delivery space is more mature and accelerated outside the U.S. than it did inside the U.S. I also feel that we in our own country have lots of issues where there's two dominant players, Uber and Lyft. In the car service space, for example, AT&T and Verizon, it's not uncommon to see a duopoly and then somebody try to penetrate. I think we do have at least three major delivery service platforms right now, although one of them is down by about $5 billion. But again, I digress. I want to go to Meredith with the following question, and I want to specifically chat with you about virtual kitchens. And I want to give credit. You're the first person I've come across that has described the difference between ghost kitchens as hardware and virtual kitchens as software. And I really love that. I also know that you have your own unique view that virtual brands were created as a better way to target consumers and to work around and with algorithms. Would love for you to elaborate on both of these. So they think they're really important points in the delivery and the off-premise space, and how this market's going to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start with the hardware software analogy. I think everyone conflates ghost kitchens and virtual brands and sort of puts them all together in one thing. And it's very tempting to do because they are related concepts, but they are different, right? And the hardware portion is the infrastructure in which the restaurant is operating. Those are ghost kitchens, sometimes called dark kitchens or cloud kitchens. And they might host a virtual restaurant brand. They might also host, a major national brand that you've heard of before, right? It doesn't matter what kind of content is going into that infrastructure. And then the virtual restaurant brands are like the software. So they are the little bits and pieces of software or applications that are riding on top of that hardware or that computer. And they could operate inside a ghost kitchen, but they could also equally operate inside of a host kitchen, which would be an existing restaurant. And I think that's a lot of what you guys see going on in New York, but it's started to become now a national trend. I think accelerated by the pandemic for sure. And what I think we see happening with the creation of so many virtual restaurants is really that it's trying to help consumers find food a little bit more easily, because these algorithms on places like DoorDash and Uber Eats, they are baby algorithms, right? So think of them in machine learning life as really, really early, like Google back in 2005. They have yet to learn a lot of things that will make what they offer to the consumer when they do a search the perfect offer. And as a result, I think restaurants are trying to create brands that will speak more specifically to different consumer need states to different consumer day parts. Great example of this, of course, is IHOP and their launching of Super Megadilla and Thrilled Cheese. And what they are doing there is they're saying, hey, consumer, you wouldn't normally search for IHOP at dinner time or maybe for late night. But we have these great brands that make a ton of sense during those day parts. And if we put them forward as brands that are targeted at those day parts, a consumer is much more likely to find them than they are to click into IHOP and look at their menu, right?
Oh, that's the whole answer?
There's
something more.
Right. I mean, I can talk all day about this.
No, that's
Meredith,
awesome.
Meredith, you could write a book about this.
I probably could.
You should write a book about this. All right, listen, let's go back in time, okay? Let's go back in time before there was delivery. And for us New Yorkers, that's a long time ago. Maybe other cities, not as long. Some people are like 5 years. Delivery in New York City has been around long before seamless web, long before. Jimmy grew up in the city. It was just part of the DNA in living in the city. You could just call up any deli, any pizza place, and you can get delivery. So the earliest form of off-premise outside of the city, it was drive-thrus. And I think you talk a little bit about in your book, delivery convenience. Delivery is the new drive-thru. But what about the rise in curbside pickup and takeout? We saw a lot of that as people recognized how expensive and all the different fees that were getting put on delivery. When you would order maybe a burrito that would maybe cost $12, you found out that it was $25 to get this burrito when you were done with everybody tacking on this fee and that fee. So what about the rise of curbside pickup and takeout? Will the next headline read, curbside is the next drive-through? Carl, take it. Oh, Carl.
I like that. Maybe we should think about that. If we ever end up with that as a future chapter title, we're going to accolade you with.
Or maybe another book.
Who knows?
Part two.
It's a big undertaking.
Curbside is the next drive-through.
Well, I tell you one thing. We do actually talk about curbside in the book in the sense of it's about giving your customer the choice. Right? It's about giving them the choice as to how they want to engage with a restaurant. Sometimes customers like to be able to go in and meet people. Sometimes they like the idea of just staying in the car because they don't want to have all the hassle of taking the kids out. Sometimes it's just easier for curbside. Where I do think we'll end up, quite honestly, Schatzy, is we'll end up with a situation where customers will be able to see which is the fastest pathway for them to be able to get access to their food. Imagine that when you're driving up 5 minutes before you actually reach the restaurant. And they're saying, well, look, if you go through drive-through, it might be 2 minutes longer than if you do curbside. That could be something. But look, the reason we wrote that chapter, Delivery is the New Drive-Through, the reason we focused on the drive-through model was because it was something that kicked off in the 60s. And it was actually something that took a good decade or so for it to be really indoctrinated into the modern day restaurant. And we put it in the third chapter of the book to be able to say a lot of this is all about how do you want to rethink the design of your restaurant. How do you want to rethink the processes that happen in your restaurant to make sure that your customer gets the best possible occasion? And so, everything they did with drive-thrus, where they created the second make line, things had to be redesigned completely to make the drive-thru model work. And now when we read through a QSR magazine each year, and they're talking about, well, this drive-thru is now 3 seconds faster than it was last year, and this is the top one for speed here. That's the level of, finesse that has been deployed in this space. So I think what we're going to find with off-premise is that, yes, it's about, for sure, making sure that delivery can be optimized. And that's everything in terms of quality, it's everything in terms of speed, it's everything in terms of accuracy. But it's also about making sure that the restaurant model is defined and designed in a certain way to make sure that the customer gets it the way they want. And that might be through drive-through, it might be through curbside, it might be walking in through a pickup window. And that has to be thought through, especially when you lay on top things like virtual brands. Right, because virtual brands are going to add further complexity into the mix as well here. I'm excited about the different channels, but it is about the omni-channel customer.
Yeah, and choice. We love choice.
Yeah, Schatz, you and I have been talking about this not just in the delivery and the off-premise part of our industry, but just the optionality that the guests and the consumer is expecting. I have a young daughter just went through the kindergarten process, and the line I kept hearing
graduation, Jimmy, am I wrong?
Well, yeah, big graduation, big nursery school graduation coming up, cap and gowns, and I know. But the comments we always heard was they'll meet the child where they are. They'll meet the child where they are, and I think that is to me it rings true of what Carl you just shared. In that the restaurants, the industry have to meet the guests where they want to be, whether it's through a drive-through, through a delivery, through a pickup, through in-store. And to me, what's just amazing is how it's going to impact the real estate associated with this industry, and how we used to build restaurants and we used to try to maximize seats. And now we have to be mindful of just how much business is going to take place outside of our four walls and how incredible that is. Meredith, I'm going to come to you with this question, if that's okay. While putting together this book, you interviewed some of the top CEOs, owners, influencers in the entire industry.
Pretty sure I was busy that day she was doing the interviews, Jimmy.
You know, Schatz, I forgot to give you the message Meredith wanted to speak to you. Whoops, my bad. Yes, well, Meredith, I got your back. So I know this question might be akin to asking you who your favorite child is. And please note, I could tell you which one is Shatzy's favorite, but I'll do that quietly. But can you share, is there maybe anyone that's specific that you interviewed that was maybe most impactful in helping to create the content? Maybe not your favorite, but maybe someone that was particularly impactful as you and Carl would put this book together.
I know if Meredith called me, I would have been the answer, but go ahead, Meredith. You take it.
No doubt. That is a very difficult question because there's some amazing people who spoke with us for the book.
It's only us listening, remember. I
note that the only person who shows up in 2 different chapters is Alex Cantor.
Great hair. Great hair.
Yeah, I mean, if only we could have had a picture of him in the book, but I think
what I wouldn't do for hair like that.
Alex has, a lifetime of restaurant experience, having grown up in his family's restaurant, but then he also has all the vision of, the Gen Z, younger millennial age of saying, no, this is how the world should work. And that's such a powerful combination between the two that he came up with a different technological way of interacting with a digital guest, and then also came up with virtual restaurants, right? And to have one person come up with 2 ideas and therefore have to be covered in 2 different chapters was pretty unique. But there are a lot of amazing people throughout the book. And I think in many ways, the book reads as almost an entrepreneurial journey of these different people who created all of these awesome tools in our industry. And for people who like things like, how I built this, delivering the digital restaurant is sort of the restaurant equivalent of how these entrepreneurs came up with their ideas and created their businesses.
I love that. By the way, hold on. Meredith commented on the vision of Alex and there's just the insight in not one domain, but 2. And I also would have commented on what a really smart gentleman he is. You comment on his hair. So Alex, when you're listening to the podcast, please remember Meredith, me, vision, intelligence. Schatz coming under your hair. Just saying. Okay, go ahead, Schatz.
Okay, and my second comment to Meredith: who is going to play Alex Cantor in the movie? Who are we thinking? Because they got to have great hair.
Yeah.
Or they could do a wig. But who are you thinking for the
movie? Brad Pitt.
It's Clooney or Pitt, right? We always go Clooney or Pitt, right? Well, either one would be fantastic.
Ben Stiller. Look at what he did with his hair with Zoolander, right? Ben
Stiller. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay, I like it. All right, Ben Stiller, if you're listening, I've got a great role for you. All right, Carl. In order to do research for this book, you actually became a dasher. You drove for DoorDash, which I think is crazy. Can you share, what was that experience like, especially as someone like yourself who's an industry expert? Now you're driving for a DoorDasher. How long did you do it? Where'd you do it? Give us a little background on that, because that's really cool.
Yeah, it was important because it drew on my experience at Kitchen United, actually, Shatsy, because we were really clear there to be able to want to make sure the drivers felt comfortable in coming in and actually having a great experience. And so the whole ethos of the chapter where we reference this is about the importance of looking at the driver as an extension of your brand, as almost the gig worker being the new server, if you will. And in that sense, a lot of drivers, and the ones that we certainly interviewed that do it full time, told us about, look, it's really difficult for us to be able to make money here. If I am waiting in a restaurant for 20 minutes before I get given the dish, I'm actually not going to be able to make enough money through the course of my evening. And so when I went out, and it was certainly a very interesting experience, the thing I'll generally tell you is I wasn't treated very well. I didn't feel like I was part of the team. I felt like I was being ushered to one side, like whatever I was doing wasn't treating that restaurant's guest with the same level of hospitality as what a dining guest was being treated. And as a result, because I wasn't being treated well, I didn't care necessarily as much about that food package, right? For me, it could have been a letter, an envelope. It didn't have to be something that you think about in terms of the beautiful way that a plate is taken from Expo and put onto a table and actually delicately explained to the guest. All of those
digging
things.
your hands into the bag and grabbing the fries?
I think the stats
because you were so angry the way you were treated. You're like, I am just gonna. You know what? I'm taking the fries.
Be honest.
Carl, don't answer that question. Don't answer that question, Carl.
I need to confirm or deny that allegation.
That means he definitely ate some fries. How could you not? They smell so good.
Only when I was delivering to yours.
But it's very interesting what you said. I wrote down, the driver is the new server. It's very interesting. And you felt like you weren't treated like an employee or a server in that restaurant. You certainly weren't treated like a guest. It sounds to me like you were treated like S.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's it, right? I mean, how you treat those folks is really important, and also get them excited, right? So I did go to one restaurant that was actually handing out to drivers little samples of a new LTO that they were putting out. And that's great, right? Because then when the driver passes over the food, they go, well, look, enjoy this salad tonight. But by the way, you should check out the pomegranate chicken that they've just done, because that's a really good one.
Be a salesman for you, just like a server.
Totally. And so
I love that.
There are ways in which I think the driver experience can be improved, but I would also urge to really think about that piece around how much time a driver is waiting. If restaurants aren't measuring the amount of time drivers are waiting inside the restaurant lobby in somewhere, that's going to be a major area of opportunity.
And of course, all this comes back around and affects the algorithms and the way the search works on the platforms. Because what do customers look at when they're looking at platforms? Aside from your brand, if your brand is great, that's good. Mm-hmm. They're looking at speed, they're looking at cost, and they're looking at ratings. And how you treat drivers affects their likelihood of wanting to come around to your restaurant quickly to pick up an order. And the faster they come to pick up the order, that means the faster the consumer gets it. And the faster the consumer gets it, the better your times are and the better your ratings are on the platforms. Therefore, the more likely you are to be prioritized in the search results that the algorithms are putting forward. So there's so many reasons to do these things right. You could say just morally treating another human being well is a good thing to be doing. But then on top of that, they can represent your brand well and sell for you. And then on top of that, they can help improve your performance in the search results.
Again, there are just so many interesting facets to this. You talked about the speed. Carl, you just talked about the culture. The temperature the food arrives at. Is it accurate? The packaging is becoming more and more important. A, for security, B, for temperature, C, people are becoming continue to become more environmentally sound and aware, and what they want to see some of these restaurants do or industry partners do. I think it's an amazing kind of ecosystem that's being born, trying to provide for off-premise food and beverage in an environment that used to be very again grounded in brick and mortar. Okay, listen, before we move on, I'm very fortunate that I saved the breaking news moment for the end of this segment, and I think I get to release it unless Schatzy jumps all over me. But you will be releasing.
Wait, Jimmy. Did you get it? Breaking news moment, Jimmy.
Wow.
Okay, you can go now.
Wow, that was I can't speak for Meredith or Carl, but I found that really annoying. But okay, the breaking news moment, you'll be releasing a bonus chapter for the book. Can you share why the need for a new chapter and when it'll be released? Any other insights you could share about the new chapter? I'm going to Carl with this one.
All right, and 30-second warning, Schatzy. If you want a quote in the new chapter, you got to think about it. I'm coming to you in a moment. So the bonus chapter is really written to help restaurants deal with the enormity of what's going on. Right, there's so much choice. You've just talked about the marketplace earlier, which I think is fantastic, by the way. But the reality is that there are so many restaurants that are trying to figure out what's the right tech platform for them. When I walk around many of these conference halls and I ask a first-party ordering platform, I say, how do you differentiate yourself from the rest? They struggle to differentiate themselves. They struggle to be able to say, this is why you should come to us versus the competition. And so this chapter is trying to tell the story of the digital maturity pathway of a restaurant, to how to think about, really focusing on third-party optimization first. You have to land that before you start thinking about virtual brands, for example. And we tell the story of this entirety of the journey that restaurants need to go on to be able to find the right level of success. And of course, highlight a few new players in this space as well. All right, Schatzi, what's the line that you like in that chapter?
Ooh, Schatzi,
wow.
to you.
That's a lot of pressure. I always default to Jimmy when you ask a question like that.
Yeah. By the way, Schatzi, that's why Meredith didn't ring you when she was interviewing person number.
Chance. I mean,
I guess I would simply say the following is that as a starting point, you have to recognize as an operator that you're going to have to utilize and leverage the DSPs. You're going to have to utilize and leverage your own native white label or otherwise, and you're going to have to strike the right balance between the two. It's never going to be an all or none. And you're going to have to then think about how you distinguish your brand on both the DSPs and then cultivate the type of loyalty, personalization, and otherwise, again, to cultivate people that want to come to your site. We actually have a lot of ideas around that, and we're very fortunate to have a lot of great tech partners that are really operator-centric and are looking to help, not just optimize margins, but do it in the off-premise world, which is so clearly a challenge because a lot of these operators weren't necessarily built to deliver, pun was not intended, in the off-premise space, and have been forced to learn it very quickly. But again, I think it's a combination. I know this is not a quote now because I talked for a page and a half, but it is a balance of the DSPs and the native and how you're going to differentiate your brand on both those paths. Yeah,
I love that. And that's something we completely advocate as well.
I was going to say exactly what Jimmy just said. Honestly, it's exactly what I was going to say.
In that case,
Jimmy and I spend so much time together. It's like we finish each other's
sandwiches. Sentences.
Yeah, it's so weird.
By the way, I've got a fun competition to see for you guys. So obviously, we'd love people to buy the book if they haven't yet, and if they go to our website, learn.delivery, our first party platform for the book. There's a coupon code, but I want to do a competition here. Okay, so there's a coupon code which is Jimmy20.
Ooh.
For your listeners, there's another one called Schatzi20. They each get the same discount, but I want to come back and tell you guys 6 months from now who wins the coupon code battle here to get the book. All right, so Schatzi20, Jimmy20, whichever you want, learn.delivery, get a copy.
Schatzi20, Jimmy20. This is a good contest, but Schatzi, no giving away gas coupons to attract voters. You can't pull that. Here in New York City, man. Don't try that S. Okay, listen. I want to turn. Schatzi, I know that went over your head. I apologize.
No, but you have to be able to spell Schatzi, SCH and SH, because everybody might spell it wrong. So you got to give the coupon. You got to give spellings.
SHATZIE. That's Schatzi.
Right.
Jimmy just said it. All
the different variations of spelling Schatzi20. That's what I'm saying. Right. To be fair. Jimmy, that's like so easy.
Jimmy's your buddy. Jimmy's your pal. You boot in his car, he doesn't care. Okay, listen, it turns out that while we started this podcast, because we like talking to people, we learned along the way that our guests sometimes have questions for us. So backed by popular demand, and by that I mean I'm doing the segment of Talking Back, where we offer our guests and now guests the chance to ask us a question. Nothing is off limits. The microphone, my friends, is yours.
Great. Okay, so I've got one. If you think about 5 years into the future, you guys always have a foot in the future with the way in which you invest and talk about the space. What are you most excited about, and what do you think's a fad?
Oh, fantastic question. Schatzi, would you like to share
I think, it's a great question, and I'll take the first stab. I think, automation and efficiencies surrounding automation clearly is not a fad. It's the future. It's happening. We've seen it in so many industries. I look back to the automotive industry was way back when their cars were hand built, and today you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of manual labor. I think you see a lot of people kind of taking care of the robots in the on the assembly line, if that makes sense. And I think, and that's not new. I think in aerospace, et cetera, I think you see robotics. I think in the Amazon warehouses today, robotics have been around there for 10 years now. So I think robotics and automation is just something that we're going to see more and more of to help replace some of the mundane tasks that are in restaurants that are just repeated over and over again. I think you're just going to continue to see more and more of that, and not displacing those workers and employees, but actually repurposing them to more important tasks, like engaging with the customer, like building loyalty to the guest, and that kind of thing. So I think rather than just, I know we all read a lot about the flippy and the sippy and the chippy, but I mean, those kind of things are just over and over. And so I think we're going to continue to see a lot of that. And as far as the fads go, I don't know which is going to be a fad per se, but I think the jury is still out. I think we were talking about the virtual and the ghost, and which model is going to win, and fine tuning that model. I think we're going to have to see. I don't want to say they're fads, but I think there's going to be a lot of work to be done to see what we end up as, what's the right model for these virtual brands. Because, I was just seeing, I know that influencers are becoming, brands now for food, but now it didn't take long for the big brands like Pizza Hut and KFC, et cetera, to kind of find an influencer and launch their own, like KFC's launching a chicken sandwich, but it's KFC launching a chicken sandwich with an influencer. It's not just, a virtual brand that's just made up. So I think we're seeing a lot of to be decided on that space. Jimmy, I said a lot. I don't usually talk as much.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm so excited about it.
You're very excited about it. And usually I follow up now with an answer that according to our viewers, 99% of them say it would be better. But I'm not going to do that today, because I think your answer.
But you can. You massage it.
No, because since we have two guests, I would like to give Meredith the opportunity to ask her question to us.
Ah.
See what I did there? See what I did there?
Yep. I think you're kissing, but I'm not going to say it.
I will certainly ask.
Jimmy wants to have a role in the movie.
Jimmy, maybe you'll be the one who answers my question. So you have both read Delivering the Digital Restaurant. I hear you're passing it around the office. And as you've gone through
I have my own copy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Jimmy stole a copy. Jimmy stole a copy off the National Restaurant Show off that.
No.
He thought it was for taking. I said, Jimmy, those are not for taking.
My book. Carl autographed my book. That was not stolen. So sorry, Meredith. We interrupted you and we apologize.
Good clarification. But it remains. You've both read the book, and I want to know, as you look around the industry, which restaurant or restaurants do you think are most like the digital restaurant that we describe in the book?
That's a great question. I guess I'll take a first shot at that. And I certainly feel it leans into I think some of the leaders in the space are in the QSR domain. And I've been very impressed by several of them, particularly what they've done with their drive-through, what they've done with their apps, what they've done to promote themselves in the way that you guys had articulated. So I'm going to put a few forward, because I don't obviously know which one it is, but I will tell you I've been wowed by Shake Shack and what they've done to continue to delineate themselves from their peer group. I have been very impressed by Taco Bell. I know that's your legacy. That's your one of your previous places of employment, Meredith. And I think they continue to impress and change their footprint. And then I'm going to tell you that I'm going to put McDonald's in there, because I believe that in watching their transformation of the last couple of years, and the way in which they're engaging with their guests has been amazing. So maybe I shouldn't have picked three stores or brands in the same kind of.
You basically said every store, every restaurant in America. Jimmy.
I picked. Well, I went to Shake Shack first, and I think they have been an outstanding player in this space, but I did want to give credit to two other quick serves. So, Meredith, I don't know if I blew it or if Schatz, you want to give an answer, but that's who I was thinking.
The answer is Wing Zone, Jimmy. That's the answer.
Well, I gave my answer.
Boom.
All right. Well, I think QSR has both a burning platform here and a need to go after this stuff, as well as the skills required to do it, right? So that's probably a very good answer. They are an industry that is built on two things, value and convenience. And as the definition of convenience changes to one where, food goes to people and digital engagement becomes the preferred method to engage with a restaurant, it is only natural that those guys would, I think, lead in doing those things.
I love it. I love it. All right. We're going to change gears real quick, okay? And we're going to go to a new segment, first time, and it's really exciting. On LinkedIn, every week, we do a poll. We have usually a fun poll built around restaurants and food and things like that. So I am going to give you this week's poll question, and you guys just answer what you think the winner will be in this week's poll. This week's poll, what is your favorite delivery-only restaurant? It's Just Wings, Cosmic Wings, Mr. Beast Burger, Tender Shack. Those are the four in this week's poll. Carl, who do you think is going to win the poll?
It's a tough one. I mean, it's
No
very
wrong answer. America's going to vote.
I think America's going to go Mr. Beast.
Carl says, Mr. Beast. Meredith, America's going to decide who is the favorite delivery-only restaurant.
Well, certainly based on their sales traction, I think Carl's right. It's probably Mr. Beast. But
it will be Mr. Beast.
Yeah, I have to say it's Just Wings because, number one, I like a huge company moving that fast. Wow, huge kudos to them. And then number two, every time I say it's Just Wings, I smile. Like, oh, it's just wings. Don't worry.
Just wings.
Yeah, it's just wings. How bad could that be? I agree. I got to tell you, it's going to be interesting.
Stranger Wings, right? Stranger Things on Netflix has just come out. Why has no one come up with Stranger Wings yet, Chatsy? That's a great brand.
Breaking news right now. Carl and Meredith are releasing a new virtual brand, Stranger Wings. And it's already been trademarked, so don't even think about trying to get it, everybody. But I love it. I love it. All right, listen. Next segment, Branded Quickfire. Here we go. We're wrapping things up because I know you guys got to go. We started a little bit late. I'm going to ask you each 5 lightning round questions. Are you ready? Meredith, I'm going to ask you the first one. Then, Carl, you'll follow up with the answer to the same first question. Meredith, are you ready?
I am ready.
Ice cream, cup or cone?
Cup.
Cup.
Where are you getting dinner from tonight?
My husband will cook.
North Italia.
What is your favorite food city in the world?
Coastal Croatia along the Adriatic. Not a city, bunch of cities.
Bangkok.
Wow, cool.
Bangkok.
Ooh.
Favorite place to travel?
Probably coastal Croatia for the same reason.
I like it.
Amalfi Coastline, Italy.
My favorite.
Oh, that's Jimmy's favorite
my
spot.
town.
All right, here we go.
Married.
If you were to challenge, Jimmy will take you on his next trip with Barbara. If you were to challenge Jimmy Wright to a game of Duck, Duck, Goose, one of Jimmy's favorites, mind you, who would you have better odds of beating? Jimmy has a 5-year-old.
Yes.
Take that into account.
My youngest is 17.
I actually think, Schatzi, just because Jimmy's a little bit quieter, and so he might be able to, like, trick me by duck, 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 goose, and say it really softly, and I wouldn't even know, and I would, like, get all confused.
Yeah.
Wait, did you say Jimmy's quieter?
Yeah.
Don't
say yes. Everybody says that.
Listen to how you're screaming at our guests. You're screaming at them. Screaming, I tell you.
Well, I'm gonna go Schatzi as well, not because of the quietness thing, but more because Schatzi, I've seen the way you like walk around the conference halls. You get distracted, so you'll go off and play a different game with someone else.
Are you shaming my ADD? Wait, what, Carl? What'd you say?
Signal's breaking up. What was that?
Yeah, no, listen, I've never been accused of having a long attention span. Jimmy makes fun of me all the time. Wait, what, Jimmy?
Exactly.
All right, Jimmy, that was my segment's over. It's up to you now, buddy, to bring us home.
I love it, man. And I agree with both Meredith and Carl. I got to say, Schatz, I think they'd have a much better odds of beating you. So I don't know if you just won the quickfire or lost it, but the fact is they both chose you. Listen, yes. Carl and Meredith, we want to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. and for sharing all your great insights with us and our listeners. We really appreciate what you guys are doing, your hard work for the industry, and really tackling. I hope our listeners just understand how complex and deeply rooted the kind of the evolution that's going on in the industry and the transition from a brick and mortar only to beyond.
I know my kids have no idea, Jimmy. They just want to make sure that they can order from their phone anytime and get food fast.
And then, you know what? That's their prerogative. They are allowed just to want that. But we appreciate your hard work for the industry and what you're doing. If you want to get in touch with Carl and Meredith directly, you can email the podcast team at podcast@brandedstrategic.com. We'll be happy to make the introduction. To our listeners, we want to thank you so much for tuning in with us. We know there are literally hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there. And despite my friend Mr. Schatzberg's banter, our subscriber base continues to grow exponentially, and we appreciate that. Yes, Shatsy?
Just want to add one thing. If our listeners haven't read the book, how do they get it?
Well, they can go to learn.delivery and get a copy of the book from us directly. And again,
and use Shatsy20 promo code. And use Shatsy20.
Let's just spell it out, Shatsy.
Spelled any way you can.
Let's spell it out. SCHATZY, right? So that's Jimmy
20
with a Y.
Or just, any way you can.
All right. But learn.delivery.
When you say Jimmy, you mean Shatsy. Okay, so check that
out. If you want the audiobook, you can go to Amazon, of course. But you can get direct from us otherwise.
There you go.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
And
all right, Jimmy, I apologize. Finish us off.
That's okay. And listen, please tune in next week. We're going to have our friend, our guest, our business partner, Mr. Gary Goodman, the founder and CEO of Yumpingo.
What a great accent, by the way, Jimmy.
Great accent. All about guest engagement, guest feedback. I think it's going to be a great episode.
And I love this pro-British thing, Jimmy. I love this pro-British thing.
No, we're all about, England and the UK and the accent. I mean.
And
hello, right, Jimmy? There we go, Jimmy. I brought it in.
I was so hoping you weren't going to bring your accent to the table. I would say, Carl, if I lost my New York City privileges, I apologize for all the other great cities in the States, but I'm taking my show to London if I lose my my New York City privileges. It's the one city in the world I feel a particular kinship for. So finally, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of the exciting guests we'll have coming up in the future, and better yet, invite a friend to hang out with us the next time. So until then, this is Jimmy Frischling, your finance guy, again expressing thanks and appreciation to Carl and Meredith, and I'm passing it back to my boy Shatsy.
Thanks, everybody. This is Shatsy, a.k.a. The Restaurant Guy. And again, if you haven't gotten the book, Delivering the Digital Restaurant, go check it out anywhere fine books are sold. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.